In the bustling Northview Bank, Ivan Petrov, an elderly immigrant with a thick Russian accent, faces cruel mockery from teller Melissa Santos and impatient customers. Clutching his faded U.S. Army veteran ID, Ivan pleads to send money for his sick granddaughter. But his broken English draws only scorn. Phones record the humiliation, and no one defends him. Upstairs, bank director Michael Carter's coffee cup shatters when he hears Ivan's name. Why does the most powerful man in the building race downstairs trembling to salute this forgotten old man? What secret from their past could turn this moment upside down? Share Ivan's story to inspire kindness and honor. Type respect in the comments if you believe every accent tells a story. Support our channel to spread hope. Join us in celebrating unsung heroes. Your support makes a difference. The Northview Bank pulsed with the frenetic energy of a Friday morning, a chaotic blend of ambition and impatience. Men in tailored suits checked their watches, their minds racing with the weight of boardroom deadlines. Young mothers wrestled with restless toddlers, their faces etched with the quiet fatigue of endless responsibilities. College students, lost in the glow of their phones, scrolled through feeds, their earbuds drowning out the world. Sunlight streamed through towering windows, casting long golden shadows across the marble floor, where a line of customers stretched nearly to the entrance. Each person was tethered to their own urgent purpose, their lives a tangle of places to be and things to do. Among them stood Ivan Petrov, his tall frame stooped under the weight of 73 years, each step a measured act of resilience. His gray coat, frayed at the edges, hung loosely on his shoulders, a silent testament to decades of wear. In his trembling hands, he clutched a crumpled paper bag, its contents, his most cherished documents, held close like a fragile lifeline. Beneath his thick white eyebrows, his blue eyes gleamed with a quiet fire, though they carried the scars of countless small wounds, the kind that come from being perpetually misunderstood. Ivan spoke only when necessary, his words deliberate, each one shaped with care despite the heavy Russian accent that marked him as foreign. "Excuse me," he would say, his voice soft but steady. "I am new to America. I try my best." But today in the hurried chaos of the bank, patience was as scarce as kindness. When Ivan's turn came, he approached window 3 with the cautious hope of someone who had faced rejection before but refused to let it define him. Behind the counter, Melissa Santos, 24 and 3 months into her teller job, sat with her eyes fixed on her screen. Her morning had been a blur of transactions, complaints, and the relentless ticking of the clock, leaving her with little room for empathy. To her, Ivan was just another problem to be dealt with, another delay in an already grueling day. "Next," she called, her voice flat, stripped of warmth. Ivan set his savings passbook on the counter with care, his fingers trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of age and the quiet urgency of his mission. "Please," he began, his accent thick but clear, each word a small labor of love. "I need to send money for my granddaughter. She is sick, very sick." His voice wavered, not from uncertainty, but from the raw ache of picturing her small, fragile body, far away, fighting an illness he could only help with money he barely had. His heart thudded with the desperate need to make this right, to bridge the distance between them with whatever he could give. Melissa didn't let him finish. "Back in what?" she snapped, her eyes narrowing with irritation. "Speak English, sir. This is a bank, not the United Nations." Her words were a blade, sharp and unyielding, cutting through the air with casual cruelty. Behind Ivan, the line stirred, a ripple of amusement spreading through the crowd. A young man in an expensive suit let out a mocking snort. "Maybe he wants rubles, not dollars," he said loudly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Should we call a translator?" The crowd erupted in stifled laughter, their chuckles a chorus of callousness that fed on itself. A woman nearby muttered, her voice low but venomous, "Why don't these people learn the language before they come here?" The words pierced Ivan's chest, though he kept his eyes fixed on the counter, his jaw tight with the effort to hold on to his dignity. Melissa, emboldened by the crowd's reaction, leaned forward, her tone patronizing, as if addressing a toddler. "No, understand?" she said slowly, each word exaggerated. No service. Next customer, please. The dismissal was a door slammed in his face, a rejection not just of his request, but of his very existence. Ivan's hands shook as he tried again, his voice softer but unyielding. I served America. Wartime, he said, each word a quiet battle to be seen, to be heard. Sorry, my English not perfect, but I try. The confession was raw, a window into a life shaped by sacrifice, by years spent in service to a country that now seemed to turn its back on him. But Melissa wasn't listening. She rolled her eyes, her performance fueled by the crowd's approval. Oh, great, another old guy making up war stories, she said, her voice thick with mockery. Yeah, right, Grandpa. What's next? You're a secret agent? The crowd roared, their laughter a wave that crashed over Ivan, threatening to drown him. Phones emerged, their lenses trained on him, turning his humiliation into a spectacle for likes and shares. A middle-aged woman shook her head, her lips curling in disdain. These people will say anything for sympathy, she whispered to the person next to her, probably trying to scam the bank. The accusation was a weight even felt in his bones, but he stood his ground, his heart pounding with a mix of shame and quiet defiance. With trembling fingers, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn card, its plastic yellowed with time. The print faded but still legible. U.S. Army veteran Ivan Petrov, followed by a service number. He placed it gently on the counter beside his passbook, a quiet offering of proof, a plea for recognition. Melissa glanced at it and laughed, her scorn sharp and dismissive. Anyone can buy fake military IDs online these days, she said, waving a hand as if swatting away his existence. Sir, if you can't conduct business in English, you need to step aside for real customers. The words were a final blow, each one a reminder of the countless times Ivan had been made to feel invisible in the land he had fought for. His fingers brushed the collar of his coat, where a small patch of American flag fabric was carefully sewn, a habit born of necessity, a touchstone for the moments when the world turned cold. It was his reminder of the oath he had taken decades ago, a promise to a nation that too often forgot him. 2 floors above, in the pristine silence of the executive offices, Michael Carter, the bank director, was concluding a board meeting. His suit was impeccable, his demeanor calm and commanding, but his thoughts were already drifting to the weekend ahead. Then came an urgent knock at the door. His assistant, her face pale with concern, stepped inside. Mr. Carter, she whispered, her voice tight with urgency. There's a situation downstairs. A customer named Ivan Petrov. The name struck Michael like a lightning bolt. His coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor, the sound reverberating in the stunned silence of the room. His face drained of color, his eyes wide with a mix of recognition and disbelief. Did you say Ivan Petrov? He asked, his voice barely audible, trembling with something deeper than a surprise. The assistant nodded, puzzled by the intensity of his reaction. Without another word, Michael stood, his chair scraping against the floor, and moved toward the door with a purpose that bordered on desperation. Who was this forgotten old man? And why would the most powerful person in the building race down to salute him? In the sterile hum of Northview Bank's conference room, a wave of confusion crashed over the staff as their director, Carter, erupted from his seat. His chair skidded backward, wheels screeching against the polished floor, a sound that mirrored the shock rippling through the room. Every gaze locked onto him, mouths agape, as the man known for his ironclad calm staggered toward the door, hands shaking as if gripped by an unseen force. Even Petro, he whispered, the name slipping out like a confession, heavy with awe and disbelief. My God, it's really him. The weight of some unspoken truth seemed to crush him, his mind a storm of memories as he fled, leaving his team frozen in bewilderment. Ivan Petrov's life began worlds away, in a Ukrainian village in 1951, where winter's grip lasted 8 months and hope was as scarce as warmth. The cold seeped into everything, homes, bones, dreams, leaving a community to ration both bread and ambition. At 26, Ivan faced a choice: remain in the village, bound to a life of quiet struggle, or chase a distant promise. With a worn dictionary clutched in one hand and the fierce belief in the American dream Burning in his chest, he set sail for America in 1977. The Cold War loomed large, and his Slavic accent marked him as suspect in a land wary of foreigners. But Ivan possessed a rare gift. He spoke 6 languages with ease and could unravel the cultural intricacies of Eastern Europe as naturally as breathing. The U.S. Army, hungry for such talent, saw not an outsider but a lifeline. They pulled him into military intelligence, propelling him into a life of peril and purpose. Barely months after arriving, Ivan, still wrestling with the quirks of English, found himself in the crucible of war. Afghanistan, Iraq, and other shadowed corners of the world became his reality, their names buried in classified files. For 15 years, he served as translator and tactical medic, moving through danger with a quiet resolve. His accent, now a target of scorn, had once been his superpower, allowing him to connect with locals where others saw only barriers. He saved lives not just with medical skill, but with words, weaving trust in places torn by mistrust. Twice, he paid a physical price. Shrapnel from a roadside bomb carved jagged scars across his back, a map of pain that ached in winter's chill. Later, he took a bullet meant for his commanding officer, a young lieutenant who later built a fortune in America, while Ivan's sacrifice faded into silence. He never spoke of these moments, deflecting questions with a simple, "I did my job," his voice steady, but his eyes haunted by unshared burdens. Civilian life brought new battles. Ivan settled in a small apartment in the city's immigrant quarter, where languages blended in a vibrant, chaotic chorus. But prejudice lurked in the margins. Kids shouted, "Go home," as he walked to the store, their taunts reopening old wounds. Strangers raised their voices, assuming loudness could bridge the gap his accent created, their impatience a quiet rejection. Yet Ivan endured with grace. The loss of his wife to cancer 3 years after his return left a void no medal could fill. His only family, a granddaughter in Ukraine, fought illness, her medical bills outpacing his pension. Still, he sent money monthly and gave to the American Veterans Foundation, a gesture of loyalty to a nation that hadn't always reciprocated. Each 4th of July, he stood at the parade's edge, hand over heart, fingers grazing the American flag sewn into his coat collar, a token from his citizenship oath, a talisman against the world's reminders that he didn't fully belong. Now at Northview Bank, Ivan stood before a teller window, his hands trembling, not from age but from the familiar sting of judgment. Melissa, the teller, leaned into her power with a smirk. "Sir," she said, her tone laced with disdain, "if you can't explain your business clearly, I'll call security." Her words struck like a blade, echoing decades of dismissal. Behind him, a customer groaned, "This guy's wasting our time. Some of us have truths." Another voice cut in, sharp and cruel. "Why don't these foreigners use their own banks? There's got to be a Russian one somewhere." A mother pulled her son close, whispering, "Benez, don't stare, honey. Some people don't know how to be real Americans." Each word landed like a stone, weighing on Ivan's heart. He tried again, his voice soft but desperate. "Please, miss, I need wire transfer. For my granddaughter. She is sick, in hospital. I have account here 5 years. Always pay on time." Melissa sighed, her eyes rolling. "Look, Grandpa, I don't care about your sob story," she said, her voice cold, leaving Ivan exposed, his dignity unraveling in the harsh light of the bank. The bank was a pressure cooker of impatience and prejudice, the air heavy with the weight of judgment. Ivan Petrov stood at the counter, his gnarled hands clutching a modest stack of documents, each one a chapter of his life, written in sacrifice. His military ID, its edges frayed from years of being carried like a sacred relic, lay ignored on the counter, dismissed as a forgery by the teller, Melissa. Ivan's heart pounded, not with rage, but with a deep, gnawing grief. He had endured worse: gunfire in Afghanistan, the cries of wounded comrades, the stench of death. But this moment, in a country he had fought for, wounded him in a way no bullet ever could. His fingers grazed the small flag pin on his jacket, a tether to his pride amidst the storm of humiliation. It brought back memories of a young lieutenant he'd saved in Kandahar, a fleeting image that stirred both hope and pain. Did that man, perhaps now a father, recall the immigrant medic who had taken a bullet for him? Ivan's chest tightened, the weight of forgotten valor pressing down on him. Melissa's voice cut through the bank's clamor, sharp and self-assured. If you can't speak English properly, you can't do business here. That's the rule. Her tone dripped with condescension, her eyes glinting with the thrill of control. To her, Yvonne was not a veteran with two Purple Hearts, not a man with a story, but an obstacle to be removed. I bet that military card is fake, she declared, her voice ringing out for all to hear. These people buy them online to scam sympathy. She didn't notice the way Ivan's shoulders tensed, the way he fought to keep his tears at bay. In Afghanistan, his broken English had been irrelevant. His courage had spoken louder than words. Here, in the nation he had adopted, he was just another foreigner, an inconvenience to be swept aside. In the waiting area, Frank Morrison, an elderly Vietnam veteran, sat quietly, his hands folded over his cane. His keen eyes caught the details others overlooked. Ivan's soldierly posture, the faint tremble in his hands as he reached for his ID, the unmistakable authenticity of the card itself. Memories of Vietnam flooded back, jungles thick with fear and camaraderie, where differences in speech or origin dissolved in the face of survival. Frank saw the quiet dignity in Ivan, the kind forged in the crucible of war. Yet he remained silent, his lips pressed tight. Part of him wanted to rise, to speak, to defend the man before him, but a deeper weariness held him back, the exhaustion of a man who had fought too many battles, both abroad and at home. The crowd behind Ivan grew increasingly hostile, their impatience morphing into cruelty. Come on, some of us have jobs to get to, a man in a suit grumbled. Another voice, sharp with venom, added, why don't you go back where you came from? The words struck Ivan like shrapnel, each one tearing at his resolve. A young woman near the back of the line held up her phone, broadcasting the scene to her followers. You guys, this is insane, she whispered, her voice buzzing with excitement. This old guy is totally scamming the bank. He's pretending to be a veteran but can't even speak English. Like, how stupid does he think we are? Her screen exploded with comments. Deport him. Fake veteran. These people have no shame. Each one a fresh wound to Ivan's soul. He wanted to tell them about his granddaughter, the little girl fighting for her life in a distant hospital. He wanted to speak of the 15 years he'd served, the blood he'd shed, the lives he'd saved. But his throat closed and the words stayed trapped within. Just give me one moment, he whispered, his accent thick with emotion. I only want to send money to granddaughter. She is dying. His voice broke, but it was lost in the crowd's growing din. Melissa basked in the chaos she had ignited. For the first time, she felt like a hero, a protector of honest Americans against fraud. She summoned the security guard, Tom, a burly man in his 50s who approached with reluctant steps. His face betrayed his unease, his eyes avoiding Ivan's as he said, Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside and let other customers conduct their business. His tone was weary, almost kind, but it carried the weight of authority. Ivan nodded slowly, his trembling hands gathering his documents. His fingers lingered on the military ID, that small piece of plastic that encapsulated 15 years of service, 2 Purple Hearts, and a lifetime of silent sacrifice. He tucked it into his pocket, as if to protect it from the room's hostility. 2 floors above, Michael Carter raced down the stairs, his polished shoes echoing with urgency. His heart pounded, each beat a reminder of a debt unpaid. His assistant, Claire, trailed behind, her heels clicking as she struggled to keep pace. Mr. Carter, should I call security? She asked, breathless and bewildered by her boss's sudden intensity. Michael stopped short, gripping the railing. Security, he snapped, his voice sharp with incredulity. We need to stop this immediately. That man saved my life. His mind flashed back to 1994, to a dusty road in Kandahar. He had been Lieutenant Michael Carter, a young officer leading a convoy through a war zone. Their translator, Ivan Petrov, had tackled him to the ground just as a sniper's bullet whizzed past, missing Michael by inches. The second shot had struck Ivan's shoulder, yet he had remained calm, bleeding quietly while urging Michael to safety. That moment had forged a bond, a silent promise born in the chaos of war. Now, as Michael hurried downward, that memory burned in his chest, driving him to reach Ivan before the injustice could deepen. Frank stood frozen, his foot hovering mid-step, the weight of indecision anchoring him to the polished marble floor of the bank lobby. His heart thudded with the urge to speak, to defend the old man whose worn military ID card had just been mocked. But before he could find his voice, a young mother's hand clamped onto his arm, her grip tight with urgency. "Don't do it," she whispered, her voice a sharp hiss laced with fear. "You don't know what these people are capable of. He could be dangerous." Her eyes darted toward the elderly man, Ivan, standing alone at the counter, his weathered face etched with quiet pain. Frank's resolve wavered, his courage faltering under her warning. In that fleeting moment of hesitation, the opportunity to stand up for a fellow veteran slipped through his fingers like sand. The sting of his inaction burned deep, a silent reproach echoing in his chest as he watched the scene unfold. Ivan clutched his military ID card, his gnarled fingers tracing its edges as if it were a sacred relic. To him, it was. His eyes, clouded with age but sharp with memory, stared at the card as though seeing it for the first time in years. His voice, barely above a whisper, carried the weight of battles fought and sacrifices made. "This card," he murmured, his accented words trembling with pride and sorrow. "I earned this. I bled for this country." Each syllable was a testament to the life he'd given to a nation that now seemed to have turned its back on him. The memories flooded back, grueling days under the Afghan sun, the crack of gunfire, the weight of a wounded comrade slung across his shoulders. He'd carried that soldier to safety while bullets sang their deadly song overhead, each step a defiance of death. The medal they'd pinned to his chest, the firm handshake from his commanding officer, the solemn promise that America would never forget. They were as vivid now as they had been decades ago. But the cruel laughter that followed his words shattered that fragile hope. "Yeah, right," scoffed the businessman who'd started the mockery, his voice dripping with condescension. He adjusted his expensive tie, his smirk wide and unapologetic. "And I'm the president. Nice try, Grandpa." The crowd around him tittered, emboldened by his cruelty. Phones emerged from pockets, their cameras trained on Ivan like vultures circling a wounded animal. Social media was already alight with the hashtag #HadFakeVeteran, a venomous trend spreading faster than wildfire. Someone had snapped a photo of Ivan, his faded coat, his foreign accent, his quiet dignity, and paired it with a caption that twisted the knife. "Scammer after alert. Fake veteran tries to con bank with sob story and foreign accent." Ivan's hand instinctively found the small patch of the American flag sewn into his collar, a faded emblem of the country he'd served. His fingers lingered there, grounding him as his mind drifted back to Afghanistan. For a moment, he was there again. Dust choking his lungs, the chaos of war roaring around him, the weight of duty heavier than any bullet. He closed his eyes, and the lobby's noise faded, replaced by the memory of a promise America had made but failed to keep. Then a soft ding cut through the tension. The elevator doors slid open and Michael Carter stepped out, his presence commanding the room before he uttered a word. His usually impeccable hair was disheveled, strands falling across his forehead from his frantic sprint down the stairs. His tailored suit, normally a symbol of his untouchable status as Northview Bank's president and CEO, was creased and rumpled, a testament to his urgency. Behind him, his assistant and a cluster of bank executives scrambled to keep pace, their faces a mix of confusion and alarm. They'd never seen their director act like this, rushing, almost reckless, driven by something none of them could fathom. The lobby fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. Conversations halted mid-sentence, phones lowered, their screens forgotten. Even Melissa, the teller who'd sneered at Ivan with smug superiority, felt her confidence waver as Carter strode purposefully across the marble floor, his eyes fixed on the elderly man at her counter. Carter's gaze locked onto Ivan's face, and in that instant, 29 years dissolved. Those eyes, piercing, resolute, carrying a quiet dignity that no amount of scorn could diminish, were unmistakable. Ivan Petrov. The name rose unbidden in Carter's mind, pulling with it memories of a dusty battlefield, of fear and brotherhood, of a debt he could never repay. "Ivan Petrov," Carter said, his voice ringing clear and steady across the hushed lobby. "Staff Sergeant Ivan Petrov, Albasosar Army Intelligence." Ivan looked up, his expression a turbulent mix of confusion and fragile hope. His lips parted, but no words came at first. He studied Carter's face, searching for something familiar in the man before him. Then, like dawn breaking through a stormy night, recognition sparked in his eyes. "Lieutenant Carter?" Ivan whispered, his voice trembling with disbelief. "Michael, is that you?" Without hesitation, without a glance at the onlookers or their phones, Michael Carter, pillar of the community, titan of industry, snapped to attention. His posture was rigid, his movements precise, as he rendered a perfect military salute to the elderly immigrant in the threadbare coat. "Sir," Carter said, his voice thick with emotion, each word heavy with gratitude and respect. "It is an honor to see you again." The silence in the bank was absolute, a stunned reverence settling over the crowd. Phones hung limp in trembling hands, their owners too shocked to record. Melissa's face drained of color, her smugness replaced by a dawning horror as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. The security guard, who moments ago had been poised to escort Ivan out, took a hesitant step back, his bravado crumbling as he recognized the gravity of the moment. Carter's voice rose again, clear and commanding, addressing the crowd with a force that demanded their attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are in the presence of one of the bravest men I have ever known. This man, this American hero, saved my life in Afghanistan. He took a bullet meant for me and 6 of my soldiers." His words carried the weight of truth, each one a rebuke to the crowd's earlier cruelty. Ivan's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he returned the salute, his hands steady now, his posture proud, despite the years and the pain. "You were just a young lieutenant," Ivan said softly, his accent no longer a mark of shame but a badge of his journey. "So scared, yet so brave. You became a good leader." His voice was warm, filled with a quiet pride for the man Carter had become. Carter turned to the crowd, his gaze settling on Melissa, whose face was now a mask of shame. "Staff Sergeant Petrov served this country with distinction for 15 years, he said, his tone hardening. "He was wounded in action twice. He saved dozens of American lives, including mine. And you?" His eyes bored into Melissa, unflinching. "You treated him like garbage because of how he speaks." The woman who'd been live streaming the mockery fumbled with her phone, frantically deleting her video, as if it could erase her complicity. The businessman who'd mocked Ivan's accent suddenly found the floor fascinating, his earlier bravado reduced to a shameful shuffle. Children in the crowd, raised to fear foreigners, watched wide-eyed as their parents' prejudices crumbled in the face of Carter's unwavering conviction. Carter reached into his jacket, his movements deliberate, his eyes never leaving Ivan's. The gesture was unfinished, but its weight was felt by everyone in the room. A promise, a reckoning, a moment that would linger in their memories long after the lobby emptied. For Ivan, it was a restoration of dignity, a reminder that his sacrifices had not been forgotten by all. For Carter, it was a chance to honor a debt that had haunted him for decades. And for the crowd, it was a mirror held up to their own failings, a call to question the judgments they'd so carelessly made. In the dim light of a bustling bank lobby, Carter, a seasoned banker with years of service etched into his lined face, reached into his wallet with trembling fingers. His heart pounded with a mixture of anticipation and reverence as he pulled out a small, frayed piece of cloth, a fragment of an American flag, tattered but heavy with meaning. 29 years ago, in the chaos of war, Ivan, a young immigrant soldier, had torn it from his own uniform to bind Carter's bleeding arm, a selfless act that had saved his life. For nearly 3 decades, Carter had carried this relic, a silent reminder of a debt unpaid, tucked safely in his wallet. Now, standing before Ivan, whose weathered face bore the weight of years and unspoken struggles, Carter extended the fabric with a quiet reverence. "This belongs to you," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion, placing it gently into Ivan's calloused hands. Ivan stared at the small piece of flag, its faded stars and stripes a mirror to his own faded dreams. His eyes, often guarded and weary, softened as memories of that distant battlefield flooded back. Moments of camaraderie, sacrifice, and a bond forged in blood. He looked up at Carter, and for the first time in years, a genuine smile broke across his face, radiant and unguarded. It was as if a long-buried spark had reignited, warming the cold edges of his heart. "I think," Ivan said, his voice low but steady, "we both keep it. We both earn it." In that moment, the banker and the immigrant, the officer and the enlisted man, stood as equals, their shared history dissolving the barriers of time and status. The weight of their past, once a private burden, now united them in a quiet, profound understanding. The moment rippled outward, its impact immediate and electric. Whispers of the exchange spread through the bank's polished halls, igniting conversations among tellers and customers alike. By midday, the story had leaped beyond the bank's walls, racing through the community like a wildfire fueled by hope. By evening, it was trending nationwide. Bank CEO honors immigrant war hero. The tale of Carter and Yvonne, two men bound by a decades-old act of courage, captured hearts across the country, a beacon of unity in a divided world. Inside the bank, however, the atmosphere was charged with a different kind of reckoning. Melissa Santos, the branch manager whose sharp words and dismissive tone had once stung Ivan, retreated to her office, her confident facade crumbling. She sat alone, replaying her actions, her snap judgment of Ivan's thick accent, her failure to see the hero beneath the weathered exterior. Guilt gnawed at her, a heavy knot in her chest. When she emerged an hour later, her eyes were red, her voice unsteady as she faced a crowd of customers, employees, and local news crews. "I failed to see past an accent to recognize a hero," she read from a prepared statement, her words trembling with sincerity. "I let prejudice blind me to honor. Mr. Petrov, I am deeply sorry. I will do everything in my power to make this right." Each word felt like a step toward redemption, a public acknowledgement of her shame and a vow to grow. The bank itself began to transform, as if the weight of Ivan's story had shifted its very foundation. That same afternoon, Carter, his heart still racing from the morning's encounter, announced the creation of the Honor the Quiet Heroes Fund. It was a gesture born of conviction, offering free wire transfers to veterans and active military personnel, a small but meaningful way to honor those who served in silence. The first beneficiary was Yvonne's granddaughter, a young girl battling illness, her medical bills quietly paid in full by a flood of anonymous donations that poured in throughout the day. Each contribution was a testament to the community's desire to right a wrong, to lift up one of their own. But the change ran deeper than policy. In the lobby, Frank Morrison, an elderly veteran who had stood silently as Ivan faced judgment, felt a pang of regret. He had hesitated, paralyzed by the fear of rocking the boat, and now that hesitation haunted him. Approaching Ivan, his weathered hands trembling, he extended one in apology. "Brother," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I should have stood up for you. I'm sorry." Ivan, his eyes warm with understanding, gripped Frank's hand firmly. "You stand up now," he said. "That is what matters." The exchange was simple, yet it carried the weight of forgiveness, a bridge rebuilt between two men who had seen the same wars but carried different scars. Word of Ivan's story spread like wildfire through veteran networks, VFW halls, American Legion posts, and support groups across the city. Soon the bank lobby filled with graying men and women, their faces etched with the marks of service, their uniforms replaced by civilian clothes but their pride undimmed. They came not for attention but to stand in solidarity with Ivan, a man who had been wronged but never broken. Their presence was a quiet rebuke to the prejudice that had sparked this moment, a reminder that honor knows no accent or origin. Carter, moved by the growing tide of support, arranged for a display case near the bank's entrance. It showcased Afghanistan's story, complete with faded photographs from his service, snapshots of a young soldier, proud and resolute, standing shoulder to shoulder with comrades. But it was Ivan's suggestion that gave the display its heart, a simple plaque inscribed with the words, "Quiet honor never forgets." Below it, space was left for the stories of other unsung heroes, an invitation for the community to recognize those who had been overlooked. That evening, the young mother who had live-streamed Ivan's initial humiliation returned, her children in tow. Her heart was heavy with shame, her mind replaying the moment she had mocked a man she now knew to be a hero. Approaching Ivan, who sat quietly reading letters from well-wishers, she struggled to find her voice. "Mr. Petrov," she said, her words barely above a whisper. "I recorded you. I was cruel. My children watched me be cruel." Tears welled in her eyes as she searched for the right words. "Will you help me teach them better?" Ivan's gaze softened, his smile gentle but firm. "Children learn what we show them," he said. "You show them now how to apologize, how to grow. This is good lesson." His words, simple yet profound, offered her a path to redemption, a chance to model grace for her children. Even the businessman who had once mocked Ivan's accent was moved to act. An envelope arrived at the bank, no return address, containing a check for Ivan's granddaughter's ongoing care and a note scrawled in hurried handwriting. "I heard your voice. I failed to hear your heart. Thank you for serving our country." It was a quiet gesture, anonymous but sincere, a step toward atonement for a moment of callousness. Ivan's story began to ripple beyond the bank. Local schools invited him to speak, eager to share his wisdom with a new generation. His first presentation was understated but powerful. He stood before a classroom of diverse faces, children grappling with their own identities, some wrestling with accents that marked them as outsiders. Holding up two flags, the small piece now sewn into his coat and the larger one Carter had returned, he spoke softly. "Language of heart is same everywhere," he told them. "Kindness sounds same in every voice." The students, moved by his quiet strength, rose to their feet in a standing ovation, their applause a chorus of hope and understanding. Carter, too, kept his promise. At the bank's quarterly board meeting, he stood before his colleagues, his voice steady but impassioned, and announced new policies to foster inclusion and cultural sensitivity. The room, usually filled with the dry hum of numbers and projections, buzzed with a sense of purpose. Carter's commitment was not just to policy, but to a deeper change, a recognition that every person who walked through the bank's doors carried a story, and it was their duty to listen. In the days that followed, the bank became more than a place of transactions. It became a symbol of redemption, a testament to the power of second chances. Ivan, once overlooked, now stood at the center of a movement, his quiet courage a reminder that honor, though often silent, never fades. And in the hearts of those who heard his story, a seed was planted, a call to see beyond the surface, to listen to the language of the heart, and to stand up for those who had stood for others. At Northview Bank, Michael Carter, a man driven by a newfound sense of purpose, introduced sweeping changes that went beyond mere policy. He mandated sensitivity training for every employee, ensuring they understood the weight of their words and actions. He expanded services to include multilingual support, breaking down barriers for those who felt silenced by language. Partnerships with immigrant support organizations flourished, weaving the bank into the fabric of the community. But Carter's most heartfelt initiative was what became known as Ivan's Rule. Any employee who demonstrated exceptional service could nominate an unsung hero from their community for public recognition. This simple act of gratitude sparked a cascade of goodwill, drawing media attention that illuminated stories long buried in the shadows. The recognition brought unexpected connections. Soldiers who had served alongside Ivan Petrov in the dusty, perilous landscapes of Afghanistan reached out to Carter. Their emails and phone calls were like fragments of a mosaic, each one revealing a piece of Ivan's quiet heroism. They spoke of a man who had risked his life to save others, who had carried wounded comrades through chaos, and who had never sought praise. Each story pierced Carter's heart, filling him with awe and a pang of regret for the years Ivan's sacrifices had gone unnoticed. For Ivan, these revelations stirred a complex whirl of emotions, pride, humility, and a quiet ache for the brothers in arms he'd lost. He read each message with trembling hands, his weathered face softening as memories of courage and camaraderie flooded back. 3 months later, at the bank's annual Community Appreciation Dinner, Ivan stood as the guest of honor. The room buzzed with warmth and admiration, a stark contrast to the cold indifference he had once faced. Carter, his voice thick with emotion, presented Ivan with the key to the city, a symbol of a community's gratitude. Ivan accepted it with a shy smile, his heart swelling with a joy he hadn't felt in years. But the moment that etched itself deepest into his soul came after his speech. A small girl, her dark eyes wide with wonder, approached him. She was the daughter of immigrants, her English careful and tinged with the melody of her family's native tongue. Mr. Ivan, she said, her voice soft but clear. My mama says you're proof that heroes sound different. Ivan knelt to meet her gaze, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Your mama is very wise, little one, he replied, his voice warm and steady. In that fleeting exchange, Ivan felt a profound sense of belonging, as if the universe had whispered that his journey had mattered. A year later, Ivan Petrov stood before a packed auditorium at the National Veterans Recognition Ceremony in Washington, D.C. Gone was the faded coat that had once cloaked him in anonymity. In its place was a crisp suit, tailored to fit the man he'd always been beneath. Yet the small patch of an American flag remained sewn into his collar, a quiet testament to his unwavering honor. As he stepped to the podium, his accent, once a source of shame, now resonated with pride. When I came to America 50 years ago, he began, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment, I thought I needed to sound American to be American. I was wrong. The audience, veterans, immigrants, families from every walk of life, leaned forward, captivated by the raw sincerity of his words. Voice can be different, Ivan continued, his eyes sweeping the room. But heart that serves others, heart that loves this country, this heart speaks same language everywhere. In the front row sat Michael Carter, now Ivan's fiercest advocate and dearest friend. Beside him was Melissa Santos, who had left her banking career to dedicate herself to immigrant services. Her days were now spent guiding newcomers through the labyrinth of a new life, ensuring they were met with dignity rather than disdain. The changes at Northview Bank had rippled far beyond its walls, inspiring a nationwide movement. Ivan's rule had spread to hundreds of banks, each one celebrating the quiet heroes in their communities. Schools wove Ivan's story into lessons on tolerance, teaching children to see beyond differences. Veterans groups forged bonds with immigrant organizations, discovering shared dreams in their shared struggles. The transformation was profound, a testament to the power of one man's courage to spark change. For Ivan, the most personal victory was his granddaughter's recovery. Her medical bills, once a crushing burden, had been lifted by a community that had learned to look past accents to the heart beneath. Now studying medicine in America, she carried her grandfather's legacy forward, determined to serve others with the same selflessness. In her dorm room hung a photograph of Ivan in his army uniform, standing beside Carter at their emotional reunion. Beneath it, a caption read, "Heroes sound like home, not like Hollywood." The words captured a truth she held close, a reminder of the quiet strength that had shaped her life. Frank Morrison, once a stranger, had become Ivan's closest confidant. Their weekly coffee meetings at the bank had grown into a cherished neighborhood tradition, drawing other veterans to join them. Men and women from different wars and backgrounds gathered, united by their service, and a shared understanding that courage speaks in many voices. Their laughter and stories filled the air, a living tapestry of resilience and camaraderie. The small girl who had called Ivan a hero now visited him regularly with her family. She was learning English in school, but she also taught her classmates words from her native tongue, echoing Ivan's wisdom. Every accent tells a story. Every story matters. The live stream that had once mocked Ivan had been transformed into a tool for healing. Carter had commissioned a documentary, The Language of Honor, which traced Ivan's journey from humiliation to recognition in the community's redemption. Schools across America screened it, using Ivan's story to teach about prejudice, forgiveness, and the true essence of patriotism. The film captured the raw humanity of his experience, leaving audiences both humbled and inspired. At the ceremony in Washington, Ivan held up two cherished items, his weathered military ID, a relic of his service, and the small piece of flag that had connected him to Carter decades ago. These are not just my story, he said, his voice resonant with conviction. They are America's story. We are a nation of many voices, many accents, many dreams. But we share one heart, a heart that believes in freedom, in second chance, in standing up for each other. The audience rose to their feet, their applause thundering for 5 full minutes. As Ivan stepped off the stage, a young soldier approached him. A recent immigrant himself, he struggled with English, his accent heavy with the weight of his journey. "Sir," he said, his voice trembling with gratitude, "thank you for showing me that service speaks louder than accent. Ivan smiled, resting a gentle hand on the soldier's shoulder. Brother, he replied, his eyes warm with understanding, you already speak the most important language, the language of honor.